Hello there! I want to talk about the movie The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is based on Bram Stoker's classic novel, Dracula. I want to keep this video spoiler-free, at least until the very end of the video, but to not speak in a complete abstract and vague way, I'll share some details about the movie that can be found in review websites, so then if I point something out, what I'm referring to is clear. The plot of the movie revolves around the crew of the merchant ship, Demeter, as they journey through the ocean to deliver unmarked crates, but on board the ship is a merciless presence that stalks them at night. Yeah, the story starts with the captain looking for additional crewmen for his ship before departing to deliver the goods. Once the new crew got selected and have boarded the ship, that's when the thriller elements started to appear in the story. I personally love thriller movies, so I was on board with the movie up until those same elements began to be showcased in the least subtle way possible, and then things in the story began to gradually shift from thriller to horror. Or perhaps it even shifted to neither of the above. See, the thing is with this movie, it takes the saying show don't tell to unreasonable level. So much of what happens in the movie is blatantly shown, like drawing a line via a highlight pen on a prominent details in a book. It's garish, it reduces the book's value and makes other details less worthy to spend time on. I don't know if people highlight novels, but if they did, the movie's like the manifestation of that. Because of how little the movie withholds, the mystery and tension are deflated from its scenes, making them less suspenseful. Even the few jump scares in it weren't effective, nor did they elicit a little flinch out of me, because their setup are often ruined beforehand. To be honest, I'm not a fan of horror movies, though I don't mind a few of them who rise above being a simple slasher. However, this movie miraculously made me appreciate horror movies, even the pure slasher ones, due to how poorly its horror moments are executed. Horror movies typically focus on the evil entity slowly unveiling the how and why behind its actions. The remaining characters in the story, for the most part, are there to be slaughtered. Here it's like the inverse of that. Spoilers, I guess. The monster is not the main focus, the characters are, which I wouldn't have minded. As they are, the characters are written well enough to get you to care about what happens to them. Also, at first, it didn't feel like there was an obvious main lead, because they all had depth to their personalities, and were unique from one another in how they reacted to the story's events, so they're not lumped together under disposable side characters. Though since the main story device is faulty, does any of that matter? To continue the inverse analogy, the monster is the least thought out element in this. Pretty early on, the movie is shown plainly under bright enough light in several scenes. I don't think there were any scenes of it cloaked in shadows, though there were some where it'll be obscured behind objects, but at that point it felt like it was done for budget reasons rather than to keep it mysterious. From what I can tell, it's completely rendered in CGI, save for a few close-up shots. For what it's worth, I'll say the CGI is not too bad. Anyways, the monster is a mere collection of cliches, one that clashes with one another. Attempting to understand the monster's methodology will fry your brain. It's one of those two things can't be true at the same time. Like one can be belligerent and timid at the same time, that sort of thing. It's funny because even when the movie tried to give a logical explanation to the monster's behavior, that conflicted with previous things that had happened. At that point, I actively tried to stop myself from trying to find the logic behind its actions, because there was none. So if you plan to see the movie, you'll need an enormous amount of suspension of disbelief, and you have to ignore reasonable thinking. I say this because I don't think the movie is completely trash. It's just one aspect of it, granted an important one, is not done well. Though it's certainly not a movie I can easily recommend. Now I'll talk about some illogical things that happened. Full spoilers ahead. Okay. So the monster is obviously Dracula. One of the characters said Dracula is rationing, referring to him hunting his food, aka the crew members. That's why he didn't hunt them down when he had the chance to. However, prior to this comment, Dracula bit into and destroyed all the livestock animals on the ship, all in one night. The ship is in the middle of the ocean, that move doesn't seem to me like one done by someone who's strategically rationing his meals. Another thing is that Dracula was referred to by the crew as a beast, and it sort of fit. He behaves like an animal. Like with the livestock's animalistus, he left those animal corpses behind, clear for anyone to see. Except unlike animals, he'd needlessly waste energy and food, which the food in his case is blood, by doing things like repeatedly smashing the victim's head against the ground, disregarding the leaking blood, or he'd cut his victims in a way that have them bleed profusely. Very wasteful. Another action that contradicts the rationing comment is when he took 2 characters down in one day. One of those 2 characters begged him to not harm him, and Dracula just repeated back to him what he said. That was the first time he spoke, but the way he said this left me scratching my head while trying to understand his motive. Was he simply parroting things without comprehending them? Was he taunting the guy, or was he sympathetic towards him? What he did later makes his action even less clear, because he simply bit into the guy and tied him up in this elaborate, sophisticated rope tying technique all the way up in one of those poles. That person later turned into zombie vampire, so because he was out in the open and exposed to the sun, he burst into flame and died. He was the first person that Dracula kinda spared. So what was the reason for any of this? Did he tie him up with the plans to get to him later but forgot to come back and finish his meal? Maybe he kept him out in the open to frighten the rest of the crew? In that instance, the crew did see the guy and they brought him down, but what if they didn't see him, like with the other crew members he attacked? Because before this, Dracula would sneak around, careful to not be seen for some reason. And by sneak around, I mean teleport behind characters or teleport out of sight. He'd eliminate his target Agent 47 style, leaving no bodies nor a single drop of blood behind, leading to the crew usually giving a rational, non-supernatural explanation to those occurrences. Then when one of the characters came face to face with Dracula, that character started giving a speech about how he's not afraid of him, etc, etc, as if Dracula's actual intent was to frighten the crew. Then Dracula said to him in response, "You will?"
Huh?
I don't know if what I listed sounded disjointed. I tried to put similar examples together, but in actuality the movie yo-yos between Dracula having some level of intelligence to him being straight up beast-minded. I don't think this is nitpicking, because this story is essentially Dracula's origin story, yet you learn and understand more if any other characters who all but one are taken out than Dracula. I could go on and on with the irrational things that happen in the movie, but I don't want the video to be too long. So, thanks for watching so far. Let me know what you think of the movie if you've seen it, or if you intend to see it. Do you think any of what I mentioned can be rationally explained? That's it. Bye-bye.